So, here's what I want to talk about. 2.4, second half, but as an entirety, introduced a lot of plot and lore for us, okay? We know that with Rover having the ability to split, having the essence of the Imperator, the big horse, in our, as part of our powers now, we kind of took a portion of it. And the Imperator's power is to be able to split things, right? As we see with Cardathia being able to split into 2 different forms. Rover has the same ability too, except not so much himself. He is shown being able to split Mia from Lupa. The Threnodian Mia, I guess, from Lupa. So when he does that, I thought to myself, okay, so he does have the ability to do that. Why did they make such a point of it? Then I put a pin on that because I'm like, all right, well, they made a point of it because they needed to make sure that Lupa was able to claim her part in the story. So, put a pin on that. He's able to split people apart. Okay? Now, the second thing I want to talk about is how, in a way, Lupa's and Mia's story, along with Cardathia, kind of reminds me of Cantarella and Cardathia, too. It's... I wrote it down, but in short, it kind of has like a little bit of a mirror, a parallel between the two, about how they're like sacrificing their role for another person. So, Cantarella's story is that she was the Blessed Maiden, gave it up for Cardathia, right? In the case of Mia and Lupa and Rover, the way that Cristoforo kind of had it planned and was maybe hoping or kind of implying or trying to trick Rover is that he, Cristoforo, wanted Rover to become the main character. So Rover would have to kill Lupa in order to become the main character of the story, which would eventually lead to another layer of everything that's happening. And it's kind of hard to explain if you don't really know how Cristoforo's powers work, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Because Rover split Mia from Lupa, the Threnodian from Lupa, now he was able to create a new character through Lupa. Lupa, when that happens, Rover kind of takes on the role of Cantarella, of giving up his role in the story and giving it to Lupa, who is kind of like the mirror image of Cardathia in this patch. And I also think it's kind of symbolic in the way that Lupa sort of saves both of the quote-unquote daughters of the Threnodian. Because both of them are created by the Threnodian. This is such a nice talking screen, the clouds. It is. It's actually very relaxing. So, I don't know. I thought that was a nice parallel. And I didn't really see a lot of comparisons of it. But it just made me think it is a nice way of kind of calling back that sort of theme of these characters. That Lupa was willing to die for the cause. She straight up tells Rover, if anything happens to where I become the bad guy, just take me out. Take me out of the count. And of course Rover's like, I don't like that. I'm tired of people sacrificing themselves. Can we not do that? You're literally the second person I met here who's trying to do that. Can we not? And so that's the reason why he lets her take on the role, because he doesn't want her to die. So the biggest thing I want to talk about though is Cristoforo. The reception of his character is so nice because he's genuinely such an evil person. So Cristoforo, he scares me, but in the best way, because we really don't know exactly how limited his powers are. We know he's very strong, and we only know one limitation. There is one limitation that he has, and I think this is the most important one, that he requires a source to create a new reality. The guy can make sonorospheres, which is strange. Cristoforo's powers is so interesting to me because he's able to create a sonorosphere, which initially we knew as naturally occurring in this world. But this guy was able to just encapsulate the entirety of Septimont into a sonorosphere. And then people are either unaware of it or having like deja vu or vague memories. But it makes me wonder why people like Augusta and Ayuno haven't, to make a point of it. Maybe they just haven't had the chance to say so yet, and likely whenever they are introduced again in the story, they will make a point of being like, yeah, we knew something was wrong with Septimont, but we still had to run the Aegon, the Great Aegon, right? I was too blinded at the fact that Rover was just inviting somebody to the Black Shores. I was like, oh shoot, he's actually inviting somebody over and it's Cardathea. That's awesome. And you can see Cardathea in the Black Shores and it's so exciting. But then completely blinded to the fact as to why he invited her there in the first place. He invited Cardathea to the Black Shores because he knew the only limitation currently that Cristoforo has is that he requires a source story. A story that is close enough to the tale that he wants to rewrite. So he is asking Cardathea to go to the Black Shores, to go see the Tethys system, and to compile any stories, any sources, anything that Cristoforo could potentially use as a source story, and then run it by Cardathea. So for sure, we're gonna be seeing Cardathea for the entirety of this patch. She is literally here to stay because she is also kind of in on it. She knows the Fraxidus is behind it, and she probably knows the story far more than Rover does. More familiar with the stories of Renacida too. She could actually fact check whatever the Tethys system has. So my bet, my suspicions, there you go, of what's going to be coming up. I don't know if it's going to be in the next patch or the following patch after that, but likely we are probably going to have a scene of Cardathea working with the Black Shores, trying to figure out what story Cristoforo is going to pick next, and try to prevent that story from even being taken in the first place. That's kind of like, I didn't really expect 2.4 to be giving me as much in there, but it really did. It really gave so much at the very end too. And it kind of makes me sad that we're likely going to be saying goodbye to Lupa at the end of 2.4. We're not going to be seeing her. But Cardathea will definitely make an appearance again. She's actually here to stay. She was also the one who stopped Cristoforo from interfering further in the story when Rover and Lupa was going through it. Right. So she has actually had visual on all the overseers who are involved in messing with Renacita. So, I mean, it was without a doubt that she was going to be in the story for a long time, but it's pretty much solidified now. She will appear again. My wonder, though, is will they do the same things for the other characters? Maybe, maybe not. I'm hoping at the very end of Renacita, we kind of have like our last hurrah with everybody. But as far as relevancy in the story, I don't know. that's where I don't know if they'll still be having like a major part in the story. Aside from Cardathea, I don't know. It'll probably just go to the new characters. Just kind of a bummer. And I hope they kind of change that with future patches. Or they could surprise me. If they could surprise me, then that'll even be better, right? But there's just so much about Cristoforo that he dropped. He's a crazy man. And I know a lot of people were hoping that he'd be playable. But I don't think he should be playable. Because he's just straight up wicked. And kinda irredeemable with his place in the story. Now, I hear that with PGR, there has been a very very morally gray characters in there that have become playable, and that's fine. It's just, I think the story payoff would be good. The way that they're building Cristoforo is everything points to his death. There's like no way around it. And the only way I could see him being playable is if Rover is able to split him from being the playwright. Because his role in the story is being the playwright. And if Rover, let's just say the concept. Oh, this is another thing too. So the Threnodian has the ability to assimilate. And what we typically see is it assimilating into different bodies, right? So Mia's body, Cardathia's body, potentially Fenrico. But then when we were going through the 2.4 patch, in the case of Cristoforo's story, yes, it was Mia's body, but the only reason why the Threnodian was able to grow with every layer of the story is because of the role. What if the Threnodian doesn't only assimilate to bodies, but it can also assimilate to concepts, to ideas, to songs, to just the role of the story, being the main character, not so much a person, but just a concept. If it can just assimilate to that, then it could potentially become a song. Brainwash people through song or art. You look at something and you're just like, oh no, it's getting into my brain. So that's kind of what's making me wonder, what else can it assimilate to? Rover was able to split Mia and Lupa to become two different characters in a role of a story, or create a new role. He could potentially do that for Cristoforo. I just don't know if Cristoforo ever wants to be a good guy. I still think he's going to be antagonistic. If anything, if he's going to use the splitting power to split a concept from somebody, it might be Frolova. I think it's more likely for that to happen with Frolova than Cristoforo. And I'm going to die on this hill that Cristoforo should die. I think he should. There's way too much foreshadowing, and even in the character, or like, the 2.4 teaser, he's shown pretty much dying in the same way that Mia does, right? There's even the Threnodian in the water when he's falling into it. Now, there is definitely a lot that 2.4 had me just sitting around thinking about. And then another thing, I guess I'll close off with this one. Another thing that I also thought is Lupa's after story. This one's kind of sad though. Lupa's after story, even though some people have kind of watered it down to fan service, and it is fan servicey, yeah. But then when you look at it a different way, this girl found out that she had died over 100 times over. She no longer belongs to a family. The septimont that she once knew is now completely tainted because she saw so many different versions of it. And after going through all those traumatizing events, seeing herself die multiple times, and realizing all the lives that were lost, the first thing that she does is drinks. She decides to get drunk, completely plastered, because that's her only way of coping at the moment. And then she shows this moment of vulnerability and weakness to Rover, who was the only person that she could really trust by the end of it. Cardathia too, but she wasn't there. So, I don't know. Now that I kind of like think about it that way, Lupa is a very empathetic character. You can't help but sympathize and empathize with her, because how else would you cope with something as heavy as that? Realizing that you don't have a home, nowhere to belong to. Your home had been destroyed over and over again, on top of you dying over and over again. So that after story really had a lot of layers going for it. Initially, when you watch it, you're like, oh, this is a sweet moment, and hee hee ha ha, she's drunk. Look at her say that she's drinking wheat juice. But then when you think about it in the sense that the first thing that she does is tries to find a crutch, some sort of solace, something to ease the blow after everything she had learned, then that after story just feels a lot different. A weary soul, yeah. Just feels a lot different. And that type of vulnerability, she would never show that when she walks out those doors. The only reason why we got to see that is because we're friends with her. We were somebody she trusted. We were her fellow warrior. It just made me feel for Lupa. So now I see it all differently. It's not even gathering-wise. Initially, I didn't even see it as gathering-wise. I think the first time that I played it, the one that stood out to me is that she's pretty much laying her life for Rover. And I was more hung up on the fact that there was just more foreshadowing of Rover requiring the help. More help than he is feasible, that he's able to do by himself, right? That there's something in the future will be beyond him, that he'll require the help of other people. He already does require the help of other people. But the way that they foreshadow things makes it sound like he needs to be saved. And this is the second person that has said that to him too. I want to be strong enough to save you, to help you, to do whatever you need to do. I want to be that person for you. And that's what kind of stood out to me the first time, but now I just see that whole entire after story in a completely different light. So I don't know. Lupa and 2.4 were a very good direction, I think. And I do like these after stories. It sort of kind of gives a conclusive end to all the characters involved, without it having to be shoehorned in into the main story. It's completely optional if you want to do it, but I still think they're worth a new look at the character as well. Oh no. Why are you dying? We finally get to see the moon again. Okay, well, I'm done yapping.